Welcome, everyone, to episode 117 of Puppet Masters and Castle Freaks, the internet's leading all things Charles Band podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jared Hornbeck, or as I'm known around here, Resident Specimen Collector. It's my official title. And you have to forgive me. I tried to get the recording going, but I was feverishly taking notes with both hands. And sometimes it's difficult to do, it's difficult to multitask doing two things, let alone three. But, I'm sitting here in this abandoned morgue, and I'm wondering if there is any genetically bred to be compatible co-host across the way from me. So who's here with me?
Oh, well, it's me, Steve Guntley. They call me the Great Stitch Man around here. This is the podcast about ambidextrous writing, gator rats, and dork-ass capes. That's because this is the podcast about Cutter's Club, a surprise recent full moon drop of a lost, heavy air quotes, 2005 movie starring the late, great Tony Todd. We were excited to hear about this one. It kind of popped up out of nowhere. We are, as of this recording, we're about 6 months from the death of Tony Todd, who is one of the icons of horror. And we just kind of saw this as a great opportunity to talk about Tony Todd a little bit and check out what a last little bit of film that we did not know was coming. So kind of worked out pretty fortuitously for us.
Yeah, I had no clue this thing was coming. All of a sudden I saw some kind of an announcement, I think from Full Moon Features, saying this lost Tony Todd movie had been unearthed. This 20-year-old thing that was shot and was dropping. I originally thought it was dropping on the Full Moon streaming app, but it looked like I had to watch it on Tubi.
Yeah, it went straight to Tubi. Yeah, but I think Full Moon does have a relationship with Tubi right now. So that fully tracks. I mean, yeah, there's a rich selection of Full Moon movies on Tubi right now.
Yeah, it's only been about 2 weeks that this thing's been out, and as soon as we saw that they were dropping it, I messaged you and was like, "Hey, check this out," and we kind of were like, "Hey, let's set up an episode for that one real quick."
Exactly.
So here we are.
Yeah, and here we are, and we are, of course, talking about Cutter's Club, which was released May 1st, 2025, directed by Charles Band, and written by Neil Marshall Stevens, and it stars Tony Todd, Melissa Searing, Davey Youngblood, Raylan Hennessy, Jamal McNeil, David Sean Robinson, and John Simonton. Now, Charles Band claims that he just happened to discover this lost film 6 months ago, coincidentally around the time of the death of the film's beloved star Tony Todd. I'm taking that with a huge grain of salt, just kind of knowing how Charles Band likes to sort of market some of his movies. But this is the quote that he gave to JoeBlow.com. It's a little long, but I think it's kind of interesting and relevant to this. He gave this following statement. He said, "I shot a feature 20 years ago starring Tony Todd called Cutter's Club. The lady who was funding it ran out of money, and we had to stop production 2 days short of completing the film. Luckily, most of it was shot, and I thought one day I would go back and finish it when the money situation improved. But then 1 year after the production shut down, as I was getting ready to complete the film, we found out the lab had lost the negative. The DP was Mac Alberg, the greatest DP I ever worked with, and we shot the film on 35 millimeter. There are a dozen more beats to this story over the years, but the end and the beginning came last November when its star Tony Todd passed away. That inspired me to call the lab for at least the 20th time and ask about the negative. No, again, was the answer. But then I thought, let me give them a whole bunch of company names that the movie might have been under. I even invented a few just for the heck of it that sounded like companies I might have formed decades ago. Anyway, the lab dude called back and told me they finally found the lost negative. The challenge was then how to put them together, the movie without the scenes that we were unable to shoot. I figured that out, another story. But for the last few months, we've been in post-production, and Cutter's Club is now finally completed." So that's the story straight from Charles Band's mouth. Seems a little more plausible when you hear it like that.
I'm going to say he called inquiring about this lost negative 19 times between the years 2005 and 2006. And then one time about 6 months ago.
I'm willing to go with that. Yeah, I'm willing to go with that. That absolutely makes sense. But yeah, I could see absolutely being inspired to check up on it. Just be like, oh yeah, I shot a movie with Tony Todd. That'd be good to kind of
for sure. No shade for doing that.
No.
You remembered all of a sudden. It's like, oh, there's this unfinished movie that I had. I mean, again, we talk about Charles Band's ability to be sort of in the moment and exploit trends and things like that. It's like, well, why not recognize that the want is going to be there for people revisiting the entire filmography
Yeah.
of Tony Todd. Like, you have something with him in it. He's going to be a commodity after his death. That's just the way it is.
Mhm.
Why not look back into that and try to put something out there? And, he said that the money ran out and it was like, okay, well, we couldn't finish shooting. And how am I going to piece this together to kind of make up for the stuff we didn't get to shoot? And I think
Right.
I have an answer, which is he realized that if you wanted to transition scenes, you can just take some B-roll from Tree of Life.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's all you need. Yeah. Just get some dinosaurs stomping around in there. Or like use footage from Robert Zemeckis's Here, you get a lot of dragonflies and stuff like that.
Right. And that stuff, those sort of those graphics in between, it's like the first couple of them, I was like, oh, that's kind of like nice looking. It's I don't, it's CG, whatever. It got, as it went on though, it got a little more ridiculous. And this is kind of the first time I felt like we ever approached like Neil Breen territory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was pretty fun. I mean, this is a very strange movie to kind of come out of nowhere. It's clearly unfinished. Like, I think they did their best patching it together, but there's not like a real clear and satisfying arc here. But it does give us one more performance from Tony Todd. And
Boy, does it.
man, is he going for it. And God bless him. Let's talk a little bit about Tony Todd. We touched on him a little bit in our Enemy Territory episode. That was maybe his like third or fourth film role ever, and he's playing the head of this gang called the Vampires, and it's like already he's so theatrical and so like campy and big, and he was really, really good at that.
He hadn't even made it to Cabrini Green yet.
Exactly.
He was already bringing that gravitas.
I mean, so he was born and raised in Washington, D.C. He went to theater school at the University of Connecticut, so he's classically trained. He had a lot of good like theatrical roles throughout the 70s, and then in the 80s he started breaking out into film. His first movie, 1986's Platoon. So that's a hell of a first movie to have. He's in a lot of good company in that one. And then we talked about him a little bit in Enemy Territory, but I think and then there's 1990s Night of the Living Dead remake, which like is pretty solid. Like I don't know. Some people.
I think now we fall. I think that's where we fall now. I think at the time it was looked at like, what is the purpose of this?
Right.
Like, I think a lot of people were just upset that this movie that was sort of like patient zero of what we consider, modern horror movies was being remade. I think the feeling at the time was that it was just unnecessarily more violent and gory than the original for the sake of being more violent and gory. But I think opinion on it has swayed over the years, and I think it's looked at pretty fondly now overall.
I had friends who claimed they preferred it to the original, and I'm never going that far, but like,
sure,
it is entertaining and he's very good in it. And they recast kind of the female lead to be a little more tough and independent, which I think is a kind of a cool choice to make.
Sure. But you mentioned
there's some stuff I like about it,
Steve, and it's funny because I never really thought a whole lot about it because he's such a bit player in that movie. But what a shame it is that we didn't get any like speaking scenes between Tony Todd and Keith David.
Oh man, yeah, that's right. God, they are both in there. Yeah, and Tom Berenger has kind of a crazy growl in that movie, and like, there's a lot of distinctive voices in that movie.
There are, and it's like if you sit Tony Todd and Keith David across from one another, I will gladly listen to them say anything back and forth to one another.
I would listen to them do the script to say anything back and forth. I think that would be really good. Yeah. I don't know. I just want to hear that. But yeah, no, Tony Todd really kind of broke out in the mainstream consciousness, I think, with 1992's Candyman, which is a really pretty unique and cool horror film. One that still like really gets under my skin. Like I watched it again recently, like I don't know, maybe like 2 years ago. And I was surprised at how potent it still is. Like, it's pretty shocking. There's obviously a lot of criticisms you can make about it. Like culturally, I think having like telling like this primarily African-American like fable through the eyes of like a white woman kind of otherizes the black cast a little bit. Like I could definitely hear that complaint, but there's something really unique about Candyman as a villain.
Well,
Like,
yeah, I mean, Steve, I've told you this many times that like by 1992, I was very much fully aware of every entry in all of the slasher franchises. By that point, was watching a ton of, even starting to get into more obscure stuff at that point. And Candyman was a movie that I found to be scary,
yeah,
and that
yeah,
was not really the case with most horror. Like most things I approached, I found very digestible, and I'm like, oh, this is such a cool gore effect. And I love, even though I was a kid, I was like, oh, I love how they did that. I want to know how they did that. Every once in a while, a movie would captivate me so much that I would kind of forget about the procedural aspect of like movie making, and I would get sucked into the story, and I would really be taken for a ride. And Candyman was one of those movies. It was really one of the first movies that actually I found to be pretty scary, to the point where it wasn't one that I really wanted to revisit. Like I
yeah,
saw
yeah,
it and I was like kind of shaken by it. And then
yeah.
I didn't own it initially. I didn't have it on VHS with my other VHS tapes, but it was one where people would talk about it, and I'm like, oh yeah, like that's a good one. A few years later, I think once I kind of made the jump from VHS to DVD, I had it, but like initially it was almost like it was too scary for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's intense. And it's like there's something really unique about the character of Candyman, because like he is very much a monster, but he's also kind of like a tragic figure. He's also kind of like a romantic figure, even though his mouth is constantly erupting with bees. He's kind of grandiose in like a big theatrical way, but he's not like campy, he's still pretty menacing, even when he's
But when
being
he barks, he
big.
shoots bees at you.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Huh, do you? But yeah, so it's a really cool performance, and it's a really cool kind of interpretation of this character. I never really followed up with the sequels. I did do the reboot from 2018, which is like a flawed movie that has a lot of stuff I like. Yeah, but that original Candyman is really pretty intense. Did you ever see like Farewell to the Flesh or
Mhm.
any of the others? Are they worth revisiting?
Um, I remember thinking Farewell to the Flesh isn't bad. I actually wouldn't mind revisiting it. It's been a really long time since I've seen it, but it's
It just
sort
turned
of,
30, yeah. So I was thinking
yeah,
about it, yeah.
well, I think there were other things from that era that were jumping out to me as the landscape was changing, like uh, you know, Tales from the Hood and Demon Knight
Yeah.
and stuff. And I think maybe the fact that Tony Todd returned, but not Bernard Rose directing, or the rest of the cast so much. I think I maybe felt like it was a downgrade in that way, and it just was. I was like, it's fine, but it wasn't. It didn't really do it for me at that time.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind watching it again. I feel like as far as sequels go, it's really not that bad. I I also have been coincidentally just really kind of gung ho to go back and revisit stuff that I dismissed from the 90s. Like
Yeah.
I remembered being 12 or something, and it was like, oh, what's this new movie, Dr. Giggles? And I was
Mhm.
like, all right, like this is obviously terrible, because I had this weird mindset that all of the stuff coming out in the 90s was more or less terrible because the heyday of the 80s was over. And now when I went back and rewatched stuff from the early 90s, I'm like, okay, well, what they were doing was very different. And obviously, slasher fatigue had set in by the late 80s. And
Yeah.
these were much darker and more grim, bleak movies that were being made, and like ones that I was kind of initially like about. I
Yeah.
found like maybe a short while later rediscovering them and being like really into what they were doing. I know you love The People Under the Stairs. I love The People
Yeah.
Under the Stairs. I didn't love
Absolutely.
it when it came out. I remember thinking that it was fine.
I was an early adopter of that movie. I was like on board from the get-go. It scared the shit out of me just seeing the
Took me a good
trailer.
10 years probably before I actually appreciated that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw the trailer on a TV show or something, and it scared the hell out of me. So I was afraid to watch it. And then when I got into kind of my horror phase in my high school years, I sought it out, and I was just kind of immediately on board with it. I'm like, this thing is funny, it's fucked up, it's weird, it's got like kind of a greater social message that's sort of buried into it, and it's like really fucking demented Home Alone. So I was just kind of on board with it from the very get-go. Did you ever get on board with another Tony Todd movie, Wishmaster?
Oh yeah.
Wishmaster,
Sure.
yeah, another kind of like 90s goofy horror movie that I kind of gave short shrift. I rewatched it recently. That one is
we
so
love
silly.
We love Divoff. I mean,
We loved Andrew Divoff, absolutely. That movie is deeply, deeply, deeply silly, but it is a lot of fun, and it's got some kind of cool special effects and character design.
yeah, there's movies from that era where I'm like, I saw that and I didn't love it at the time, and then I went back and like Wishmaster was one of those ones where I was kind of like reluctant to accept it as a franchise. Like it was kind of maybe by the sequel was coming out. Same thing with like Julian Sands and like Warlock movies.
Yeah. Warlock's a good example. Yeah.
And then also what I used to kind of confuse for Wishmaster until a few years later when I differentiated them, which was Brain Scan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never seen Brain Scan. Yeah.
Oh, Brain Scan's a lot of fun.
Okay.
I guess like what I'm getting at is like what they were a lot less sort of like in the mainstream pop culture zeitgeist at the time, but then like early 90s movies were doing something totally different. And then the ones that I did really like I really like Child's Play 2, and I really like Misery, and I really like Exorcist 3. And 1990 had a lot of really good movies, but I'm always like, that's
Tremors.
1990. That's not the 90s. Tremors, yeah.
I'm just
like, that's not the 90s.
People can't see it. Throwing one up for Tremors.
Yeah. That's not the 90s. That's just 1980-10. Like
it literally is. It came out like the first week of January 1990. It's like the first movie to come out in that decade. And man, sure it in on a good.
And as somebody who discovered horror in the 80s, I was very resentful of the direction that it went once it was apparent, like, okay, Jason has run out of steam, Freddy's run out of steam, Michael Myers ran out of steam a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I just was kind of like, oh man, like horror movies really suck now. And I feel like that's kind of the shitty attitude. As much as I love Scream, and I do love it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the shitty attitude it brings to is it's
a little bit. Yeah.
It's like, wow, nothing this decade has been good until now. And that's really not true.
And there are a lot of like the slasher movies that came in the wake of Scream were just sort of like less clever attempts at making the Scream style of humor, you know, and they just like watered it down so bad, you know. So yeah, I still think Scream does it better than any of those other ones ever did. But yeah, it's clumsy. But I think the other good reason to be talking about Tony Todd right now is because his very final film is coming out in theaters, I think tomorrow when we're recording this. So his other big horror franchise is Final Destination, a series that I love.
It's great.
So ridiculous. It's such I love a good like Rube Goldberg gore scene. Those movies just understand perfectly what they are. I hear it's fantastic. I'm hearing really, really good things out of it.
I'm excited for it. And if it wasn't for The Final Destination, I would say it's a franchise that is really a baseline of generally really good quality.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened with that one, because it's like, yeah, it's all like kind of 3.5 out of 5-star movies, and then that one's like a 1. Yeah, it's just like this weird flat note in the middle of a really good run.
Yeah, I will say, like, I have a real soft spot for Final Destination 5.
It's fantastic. It's easily the best one. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the whole gymnastics scene is just one of my favorite moments of, I'll call it a recent horror movie. I'm kind of playing fast and loose with the phrase recent, but like that, man, is that terrific. And you know what I might do, actually? I'm not going to rush out this weekend to see it, but I might do a full franchise rewatch to get myself ready for it, and then maybe try to sneak in a matinee next week.
Totally. Yeah, I might, if in my very limited free time, I might try and sneak out and catch that one, because that one looks like a lot of fun. But yeah, and it is going to be our last chance to see Tony Todd on screen. You know, he already kind of knew he was ill, I believe, you know, in this movie. And similarly, he recently appeared as the main villain in the Indiana Jones video game, like a very high quality, like Indiana Jones video game that came out recently. So
cool.
We got a little bit more of him there, you know, so it's cool that he's leaving a legacy. It's cool that people are remembering him, and it's cool that like he is a guy with enough stature in the horror community that you can totally understand Charles Band being like, yeah, okay, it's time to revisit this
Oh,
guy. Like,
yeah. I mean, aside
people are
from the
going to be
fact
interested.
that his name was in the headlines within the community upon his death,
Mhm.
he is a bankable name. And so that was sort of, and I don't want to say that Charles Band was taking advantage of the fact that Tony Todd had passed to just push out another movie on the public. That's not what I'm implying. But I do think when you realize that you have something with someone not only who is having a cultural sort of moment where people are grieving him
Yeah.
and talking about him. He was he was still just a bankable name. Also, he's not a morbid curiosity. He's
Yeah.
somebody that people want to know. They want to consume as much of the filmography as Tony Todd as possible.
And
So,
I've never met the man personally, but we do know a lot of people who knew
sure.
him personally.
Same,
Like
yep.
through we have a lot of connections to him, and everything I've ever heard about him is just that he is a total gentleman, wicked smart, apparently an incredible chef, like a world-class chef. He's hosted cooking shows on like HGTV and stuff. Like he's legit.
Well, I think I texted you this off mic, but when the day that was announced, when
Mm-hmm.
that story started hitting, I coincidentally was out with Adam Torkel, a friend of
Mm-hmm.
mine, and a two-time guest of the show, who did know Tony Todd reasonably well, and
Yeah.
so when we opened it up on our phones, and he was really like visibly shaken by the news, and then we kind of just chilled for a little while, and he just told some Tony Todd stories, and it was a really nice couple of hours after finding out that news. So like that was how we found out about it, and then we did in the immediate aftermath. I also have never actually met him, but it was nice to listen to Adam tell some of those stories. Now, Tony Todd, like we said, really great filmography, a lot of iconic roles. Now, this movie in particular, it's nice that he's getting Final Destination as his true send off, because
Yeah.
I mean this is an unfinished movie, as we mentioned
It is.
before, and so how would you describe, like, what would be your plot synopsis of this? Because it's definitely like there's an outline of a plot here, but some gaps need to be filled in.
You could almost say this has been stitched together. But this is I would call this
The Cutters Club here were the group of editors that tried to save it.
that's the true Cutters Club.
No,
Yeah.
no disrespect, Danny Draven. That's a joke. I know you got editing credit on this. I'm not trying to talk shit. You did a good job.
This is like honestly like an impossible task. Like, yeah, because it's missing a lot of story beats. But I would say this is kind of the unholy union of Reanimator meets Island of Dr. Moreau meets Flatliners. Yeah, a little bit of Hollow Man is in there. Like, yeah, and then there's just like a smidge of Coven from American Movie with their dork ass capes. And I could not get over that, how much they just look like I don't know, stereotypical like 80s movie virgins. Like they're wearing their golden medallions and their long elfin cloak, and they're trying
I gotta
to
go to
take
the
it seriously.
store and get some Surge. Man, American Movie, by the way, that movie rules.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I haven't watched it in a while. I got to revisit
I
that.
wasn't sure how we would ever get there, like as a reference on this show, but here we are.
It
And it's
fits
like,
in. Yeah.
oh man, that movie is so much fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been a long time since I followed up on that one. Yeah. But yeah, I still remember Mike Schatz's blood curdling scream. I will remember that to the day I die. This quiet, mellow guy just like dropping that. So good. Yeah, so this is a movie about a, let's say, wildly unethical professor, that's putting it very mildly, who is not only in the midst of a crazy nervous breakdown, he is experimenting with a lot of different animals and creatures and trying to create some kind of hybrid. He's also seemingly banging every co-ed in sight.
In true Tony Todd fashion, I like to think.
Just you throwing it around, I guess. Yeah, he is involved with every single student that he's ever met. And then there's just kind of these two hyper ambitious young like medical students who get involved in this secret society called the Cutters Club, and they're going to experiment on stitching different people together. And I kind of lost track of things after that.
I like to think that the Cutters Club and the Killers Club go to the same college. And
yes, they sure do.
Frequenting the same haunts.
Do you think a cutter and a killer occasionally are standing in line next to each other at Starbucks and they just have no idea?
No, I was going to say they're like the Jets and the Sharks.
Okay. So they're rumbling. They're rumbling on the quad.
Just rumbling all the time.
Murder, cutting, stitch, pow.
Yes, exactly that.
Exactly that.
So much like my like what I'm picturing in my head. It's scary. No, I think I will say, judging from our text exchange before coming on the recording when we were kind of watching the movies for the first time, I actually expected to come into this recording being a lot more complimentary of it because yes, I mean this is a kind of Frankenstein's monster of something that is totally incomplete and missing maybe some of its vital organs.
Yeah.
But that being said, I actually quite enjoyed watching this. I think there are some things that make it, if not a good movie, a really fascinating curiosity that I'm glad was able to be saved to the extent that it was and restored to the extent that it was, because there are a lot of things going for this, especially when you think about in 2005 when this would have been shot. And the first thing I want to say is that it started and I was like, why does this look so good comparatively? Yeah. And it's because A, it was shot on 35 millimeter film, and B, in which there was a negative to then be recovered and restored.
Yes.
But it was also shot by Mac Ahlberg. And the thing is, there are times, there is a lot of this movie takes place in a morgue where there are scenes that are framed and shot and look almost as good as scenes in Reanimator, without, of course, maybe they're not quite as set dressed and there's not like the detail of the set, the production value, the production design, I should say, maybe isn't quite the same as Reanimator. Obviously, we're talking about something shot. If Reanimator, I just spoke to Dennis Paoli a few days ago, actually, and he was talking about Reanimator being shot in like 21 days or 28 days or something like that. I mean, this is a quarter of that probably that they had to make this. Yeah. And I was laughing to myself when Charles Band was saying that 2 days of shooting didn't happen. I'm like, well, that's a quarter of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, literally, I think they had 7 days of shooting and they were budgeted for 9.
But I think there's moments where it was shot in a way where like the shots are framed and the characters are blocked in a way that makes sense. And it was like, it looked like a cool, creepy morgue with some nefarious cult members and professor/surgeon. And I thought only Mac Ahlberg at this time could take kind of what's here on the page, which doesn't seem like a ton, and make it look really good. I mean, the scenes when they're then back at somebody's house or something like that, I mean, it's a very like underdressed, underpropped house. It's and
they're med students. They're working around the clock. They can't.
No, I mean, at least Dan Kane has that "Stop Making Sense" poster right above his head, which that's a good poster. That's a great poster.
That's why he gets the ladies.
Right. And it's like he's looking for a roommate. He's so busy. He hasn't even had time to unpack. It's a house is full of boxes. That's a great attention to detail.
Yeah,
this doesn't have. But I was like, man, if you look at some of the other 2005 stuff that was either early adopter of digital shooting or shot on video comparatively, I mean, compare what this movie looked like to the first Ginger Dead Man.
Well, I was going to say this it's fortuitous that this one came out as well, because this is now the new final film that Mac Ahlberg shot, as opposed to Evil Bong, which was the final one before that. So that gives us a little bit of a redemption arc here, because not his fault, but Evil Bong looked like hot ass. And this movie looks like a movie. It looks really nice, and it's well shot and it's well lit, and so it's cool to see. This also gets to be one last contribution from John Carl Buechler, who
Exactly.
is the special effects artist here, making some truly wild puppets. The rat gator, the stitched together. I mean, so much of this was reminding me of early episodes of South Park, you know, when they had that like genetic scientist character, you know, who was always like trying to give things more asses. That's sort of the vibe that this was reminding me of.
And then they landed on Man Bear Pig.
They landed on Man Bear Pig, exactly. So that, I mean, but I was laughing at a lot of like the cat puppets and things like that. And then they have this like multi-headed monster that pops up at the end that is very Buechler, which is kind of fun to see.
Well, that's what I mean. I was sort of like, I sat down expecting, I'm like, okay, this is a 2005 full moon. This thing's going to be murky. It's going to hit me with some new metal immediately. You know, and it's going to look, I was going to say, maybe this is another thing where there's going to be an issue with the frame rate or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, like the opening credits started and I was like, okay, like this doesn't look too pixelated. This doesn't look like it bled out too much. And then the actual like movie started and I went, okay, this looks much better than I was anticipating. And so I was pleased with that. And so I think it kind of like lifted my spirits going into it. And then I'm watching it and I'm thinking, as Tony Todd is playing things to the rafters, you know, I'm like, and I saw some of those names in the opening credits of John Carl Buechler and Mac Alberg. And I'm like, okay, so amidst this sort of half finished thing that we're getting here, okay, I'm not going to judge this on the way I would judge a review based on a regular narrative movie that had its entire production time and its time, you know, edited, post-production, all of that stuff. And I started to look at it. Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the most professional production of all.
Of course.
I was like, I'm going to watch this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to see like, what are we getting with this artifact, this unearthed thing that was found? And it turns out what we're getting is an incredibly over the top and incredibly fun Tony Todd performance. We're also getting, like you said, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, the man knows exactly when to layer it on. You know, he is really good at going. He can be subtle. He's given very like, I think Candyman is a pretty subtle, like nuanced performance, you know, and he does like some great kind of like Vincent Price sort of stuff in the Final Destination movies that are a lot of fun. This is him really going big. He is full on crazy pants.
I'm glad he did because he had obviously it's an acting choice. And I think he could have had the choice to go subtle or to subdue his performance here. And I'm so glad that he didn't, because there are times when he turns it up to 11 real quick. And I was like, that's great. One of my favorite moments is they're downstairs doing, it's when they have like the corpse of the other cult guy. I forget the character's name. I'll look it up in a moment. But there's a police siren from outside, from upstairs and outside. And he goes, "Oh my God, what the hell is that?" And I'm like, dude, it's a siren. Like, you know what it is.
You know what it is.
I wondered if that line was ad-libbed, you know, if he was improvised, if it was like, okay, you just react to the fact that the police are outside. I got a kick out of that. I got a kick out of when he pulled Jill outside and he's talking to her about how fucked up it is that, you know, she brought Jack around now because he still has feelings for her or something, but he's playing it like so intense and so close to her face. And I was just like, man, he's just really like, and I think we say this a lot when we praise these genre actors who work on some of these really low and micro budget productions, where it's like they're treating it like a movie and they're saying like, I'm not going to give 25% or 50%. I know this is a quick, cheap thing, but I'm still going to play it a certain way, or I'm going to give it 100%, or in this case, 500%.
Exactly. No, he knows. I think that this movie needs a little shot of energy if it's going to kind of get over the finish line. I think we talk a lot about Charles Band directed movies in particular can be a little talkier. There's more dialogue, there's more like character interaction, there's more stuff like that. So this did need a little bit of that kind of like high camp energy, and he knows exactly how much to put on and still make it fun. I didn't find the rest of the cast particularly noteworthy. Unfortunately, they're not really keeping up with him in the way that he's going. Like he is. I feel like he is shouldering a lot of the heavy lifting
for sure. I really like Melissa Searing, who is Jill. I didn't really find anything that memorable about her performance. Like I wouldn't say it's like an out and out bad performance, but it's just sort of like, it's not really memorable. She doesn't really, do a whole lot to separate herself from anyone else. Davy Youngblood, who plays Jack, I found myself hating this guy for a couple of reasons. One of them is not his fault. One of them that it was just, he was dressed too much like how I was dressed in 2005, and it made me angry.
Yeah.
And his hair was just too crunchy. Like even Jill had like a very 2005 haircut and like the low rise boot cut women's jeans on. And I was just like, man, I hate that that's coming back in fashion.
Yeah. That was never the best look.
No.
This guy's got a very interesting IMDb if you take a look at it. Like I'm not trying to IMDb shame anybody here. It's a lot of like smaller roles, but a lot of his profile photos are from a performance where he played a white nationalist gang leader. So there are just a lot of photos of him wearing swastikas or like having big spider tattoos on his neck. So interesting choice. But he's versatile. Yeah. He's also a doctor in some of these.
Yeah, I will say the one character who I couldn't name before, who was Martin.
Yes.
He, that guy, he was trying to look menacing, but he honestly looked way too much at times like Curtis Armstrong.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, I can't.
Booger.
No, you can't. Yeah. And I was just like, I'm not intimidated by him.
I don't really see Booger intimidating Candyman either. Yeah, so he was trying to kind of get in his face. I don't know.
Oh, you know what? I almost just fucked up, and I'm glad I caught myself, because I almost made a really terrible mistake in which I would just have to just end this recording, resign from the show, and never come back, which was I almost put Curtis Armstrong into the lead role of Evil Speak.
Oh my God. Oh, hold your tongue. Hold your tongue.
I know. I mean, there are some similarities, I suppose, between Curtis Armstrong and Clint Howard, but like I was about to say something about Evil Speak, and then the Frank LaLoggia movie, not Fear No Evil. What's the one where he's like tormented by the like gay bullies?
That's not a Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, it would make for a pretty great double feature with Butcher Baker and Nightmare Maker. Actually, it's funny you bring up Butcher Baker and Nightmare Maker, because I do feel like I think I even wrote it down in my notes that Tony Todd is giving a Susan Tyrrell-esque performance.
Absolutely.
And we've been championing that movie, it feels like, recently on this show, just coincidentally. And so for what feels like the 20th time, if you have not watched Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, like please watch that. Mother's Day was last weekend. Not to date the recording, because obviously it won't be released then. But if you didn't get the opportunity to watch Butcher Baker and Nightmare Maker on Mother's Day, rectify that if we ever get Creepy Ants Day as a Hallmark holiday.
Look, I know it's a tired old tradition. Every year you sit your mom down to watch Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. We know it's a cliche, but hey, come on, do it anyway. Do it for mom. Until Crazy Ants Day, of course. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. By the way, I spoke over you, so I apologize. Shout out to Tiffany Shepis for us talking about our discovery of that movie. By the way, the movie I'm talking about was called Fear No Evil.
Fear No Evil.
From 1981. And it's a Frank LaLoggia movie where it's similarly to Evil Speak. It's just about like a bullied kid, but this time he's the personification of Lucifer.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, that's a crazy one too. You should check that out too. That and Evil Speak would be like a really great, not Curtis Armstrong related in any way.
Yeah, look, folks,
Double
don't write
feature.
us, don't add us. We know that Curtis Armstrong played the Ice Cream Man, okay? We're not
Anyway,
dumb.
I got
Anyway.
myself completely off track there, but what I meant to say was that that guy's performance was not all that memorable, but I did like some of the facial acting of Raylan Hennessy as
Yeah.
Kyla. I think she was a little bit can't kind of campy and over the top in the wrong ways with a few of the line deliveries, but I thought some of her facial acting was fun, and I think she understood the assignment.
Well, you do know that a cat is very different from a monkey, my dear. That wasn't quite it, but yeah, that was fun. I had fun with that line. I did. I think she was having a good time, and like, yeah, again, you just gotta love it when actors understand the assignment and they understand just like what sort of energy they need to bring, to kind of help
And
keep this thing moving.
another connection to Reanimator that I made myself that I don't know is necessarily there. I feel like I read into it was that, when you're dealing with these like academics who are also doing some like nefarious and how else shall I put this? Like I guess just like there's a word, not unconsensual, but like immoral, I guess. Maybe it's not really the
Mm,
word, but that's where I'm on the right track now. I'll get there eventually. Kind of like cosmetic surgeries like this. They're doing it. I was wondering, like, would Tony Todd's character like get along with Herbert West?
yeah, yeah. I feel like they would probably they're two big personalities, maybe, and I don't know that Tony Todd would be interested in him physically. So I don't know. That seems to be his only interest in people is people who will be subservient to him or people he can bang.
Well, it's like it's like deviant surgery, like deviant
Yeah,
medicine. And it's like, they say and he wants to do it for, the sake of art. And I mean, I guess if brevity is wit, then surgery is art,
yeah,
according to Tony Todd's character in this movie. But I was getting shades of that too, where I'm like, I think I like the conceit of, somebody who is a disgraced academic who is going against the standards of the university or the facility where they're working and doing these underground experiments and underground surgeries and stuff like that. I always find that to be an interesting trope in movies. So
yeah, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, no, there's some fun stuff here, and it is nice just kind of getting the full moon dream team like back in effect. A lot of people who are gone now, and now we have like one last little bit of them. So that's fun and that's valuable. Like the whole trend of releasing an unfinished or an unloved movie after an actor's death is time honored. It goes back to very early days of exploitation filmmaking. I mean, we wouldn't have half of Bruce Lee's movies if we didn't do that.
Sure.
There's a lot of a long tradition of that. It's maybe a little morally gray. It's maybe a little, well, exploitative, but it does give us like one last kind of moment with artists that we love. And that's pretty cool. I don't know. I think it's a net positive.
No, I agree with you 100%. And I think that was what informed my watching of this movie was I was not so concerned with like the lack of exposition or explanation for why certain things were happening.
Yeah.
I do, this comes in at an hour, 6 minutes, and there's enough good stuff here that I was enjoying that I wish it was longer. Like I wish some of those gaps had been filled in. I wish we had a 75 minutes of this because I think that, like you're saying, I just sort of sat back and was like, we've got this almost lost to time, completely bonkers and gonzo over the top Tony Todd performance.
Yeah.
Almost lost to time, super gnarly, memorable Beakler creature design, and almost lost to time, a well lit and well shot on 35 millimeter in 2005 Mac Allberg movie that, like you
Yeah.
said, can now supplant Evil Bong as the last thing that he shot. And all of those aspects made me really kind of look at this thing differently. Instead of being like, oh, they kind of churned half a movie out or 3/4 of a movie, it was like, well, look at what was saved here. And to
Mhm.
me, though the parts are the sum of the parts is greater than the whole, I suppose, or the parts are greater than the whole. Did it make a cohesive, gripping movie? Not necessarily, but I sat back and thought about what it meant to have these things found and restored and put out there. And as morally gray as that could be, I just feel like that wasn't really the case here. I
No.
feel like Tony Todd is revered enough of a person that I can totally understand the motivation of Charles Band to try to get this thing out there, to try to find it, to locate these negatives, clean them up. I do get it. And it was just kind of a really fortuitous, happy accident that we got this last Mac Allberg movie and
Yeah,
then we got more Beekler. And so
absolutely.
in 2025, to be able to have this little keepsake of this thing that these people worked on that almost never was,
Mhm.
that's how I'm choosing to look at this. And if I ever have an hour where don't have really anything else to do and I want to just kind of go back to this for the Tony Todd of it all, I might just do that.
Yeah, you have it available to you. Absolutely. And everybody out there has us available to them through many episodes of podcasts. How's that for a seamless segue?
Man, that was not sweaty at all. And I
I'm
loved it.
bone dry over here. Bone dry.
My feet are soaked, but my cuffs are bone dry.
Everything's coming up Millhouse.
Yeah. So if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoy the podcast that we bring to you each and every week, oh, you know what? This is actually a good time to do this too. I don't think it's said enough that for everyone who does, we do say thank you to those of you who are joining in week to week. But we really do want people out there listening to know, like, just how important your listenership is to us.
Absolutely.
And how much we appreciate every single person who is taking the time to download this podcast, to listen to these episodes, to leave Spotify comments, to want to engage with us, to email us, because literally you could be doing anything else.
You absolutely
could. That you're not, and that you're spending this hour or 70 minutes weekly with us, or even if you dip back in every few weeks because one sounds interesting to you, or if you've only listened a couple times, we're just so appreciative that you took the time to do this. You don't have to, no one's forcing you to, you're choosing to listen to Steve and myself. And we're really grateful for everybody that's out there who is listening and continuing to help the show grow. Because
Absolutely.
if it wasn't for you guys, we'd have no one to do this for. And as much as I enjoy just talking to Steve, it's nice to know that there's also an audience.
Absolutely.
For episodes. And if you want to keep up with what's coming up in the upcoming weeks and stuff, the best way is Instagram. Follow us at puppetmasters_Castle Freaks. You can follow me at _Giallo_Jared or Steve at Minotaur Matador. Like I mentioned, rating the show and leaving a review if you want to take the time is just something that is so helpful also with helping us reach an even wider audience. So we would love if you would take the time to drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, just to help our numbers grow and help us see more people. We know some people are watching the show through YouTube, which is really great. Once our schedules quiet down a little bit, maybe we can do some more YouTube content.
Yes.
But for those of you who are using YouTube to watch the show, thanks for finding it there and checking in every week. But that's a lot for Steve, because Steve's got another great show that he would like to plug. What else are you working on?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I have a show called Cinema Arcade. That's the podcast about movies and video games and all the sparks that fly when those worlds collide. We are watching a movie, playing the video game based on it, and discussing how they compare and contrast. We've had recent episodes on like the Predator movies, on B movie, on we're going to have one coming out on Babe. We're going to have one coming out on the Warriors. Lots of really cool stuff coming up. And of course, we're going to land on a 4th of July this year, which means, we got to talk about Independence Day. I'm very excited about that one.
Of course.
So yeah, check that out wherever you get podcasts, and check us out next week, because we are going to be talking about a movie that I have been assured Stewart is not actually a Marvel Iron Man comic, but it is in fact Demon in a Bottle, which is a genie movie from is it Moonbeam?
I think it's just a
I
full
believe.
moon, but it's
Okay.
it's very moonbeam adjacent. And are you sure it's not a Christina Aguilera biopic?
She was a demon in a bottle. Got to rub her the wrong way.
Well,
Is a I don't know. Where's Andrew Devoff? Is a Jin the kind of demon? We need to answer this right now, because she is like basically the Wishmaster, right? And that's the premise of that song, is that she is the Wishmaster.
I think so. I have to try to remember the music video, but I know the crop top definitely makes me think that she was up to some nefarious doings.
Yes.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning in this week for Cutters Club. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next time for Demon in the Bottle.